A lot of people looked at Battle for Azeroth as the worst expansion, or if not one of the worst for sure. And I never really felt that way. Out of the gate, it was really rocky. There was a lot of problems, especially technically with the expansion at launch. Really had a rushed feel to it. You could tell that, especially that stuff that was going on with the auction house, was just clearly not something they were prepared for. Caused a lot of problems with the servers, caused a lot of problems with just the game in general. Made it very difficult to play the game early. My biggest issue with the game at any point in the expansion was Azerite armor, though. There's some really cool potential there. I was really hoping for something more similar to the Legion Legendary system, especially Blood DK. It had such potential, but it kind of just went the whole expansion like relatively undertuned. And they removed my favorite one. I think it was like something about a Vamp Blood Leech. I like that. They removed it after the first tier. It was going to get overpowered for sure. And I thought it was overpowered in the first tier. So, yeah, there was just never really that big impact moment for me with the Azerite gear, but I do think that they got a lot better over time. Really, the seminal moment was when I think it was at 8.1, they added an extra ring to it, and that just really that's something that I think they should have just went even further with. I think it should have been 5 or 6 extra rings. Like the more rings, the better, because these items clearly were not having as big of an impact as they could have on our characters at the time. Now looking back at it, it sounds a bit ridiculous, but at the time, these items were very, very low impact. The difference between the best and the worst was minimal, and it was so some of the traits were so bad that there was no reason to ever take them. So I'd like to see it where there was maybe like 5 choices and you couldn't double up. You know what I mean? You had to pick one or the other. I think it would have made it a lot more interesting, but in the end, they ended up going with the system they went with. Another big moment was when they added Residium, solved a lot of the problems there. So early on, very dissatisfied with that, especially because a lot of people in my guild, they're not necessarily Mythic Plus players, but they were relying on getting good gear from Mythic Plus for the early progression, and they were getting extremely unlucky. If you remember, before Residium, you literally could not get an Azerite piece other than in the weekly cache. We had a guy in our guild playing a druid. He got 3 Azerite pieces 3 weeks in a row, and he didn't even really want them. And then there was another guy in our guild who was playing a mage who could not get an Azerite piece to save his soul. He was wearing normal Azerite until he basically quit over the system. So that was ultimately the thing that really stopped me from enjoying Battle for Azeroth. If at any point it did, it was just the start was so kind of murky, and it pushed a lot of people away. I feel like a lot of my longtime friends quit in Battle for Azeroth too, and it's a real shame because even now I haven't talked to them like for years. It's been people go and you raid with them for 10 years, and then because one expansion doesn't, it's not the best or something like that, they're gone for good. So another big issue with Battle for Azeroth was Classic. I mean, it's really sucks to say it, but Classic absolutely almost killed this game for me. Like legitimately, almost made me stop playing this video game. Terrible decision on Blizzard's part. I know very few people are going to agree with me on that, but releasing a competing product when their own product is struggling is just horrible decision making. Obviously, it brought a lot of people back to the game, so now you might look at it as a good example of good something that they did right in the last few years. But it was just a horrible time to release it. It really sunk the ship, and it could have absolutely it almost broke our guild. Like to be honest, I don't know how things are still going after what happened in that season. We lost probably about 15 raiders within about a 3-week span there. So the fact that we actually continued to raid that tier and then raid it into Nyalotha is frankly a miracle. It's one of those things that I just don't really know how we got through. And it really made me enjoy the game less because I was basically not able to play the game. I had to recruit 24/7 if I had free time, and I wasn't recruiting. It meant we were probably not going to raid for another week instead of, literally it was just we were just waiting for people to join the guild. We had not anywhere near enough raiders. So a lot of people might say like that's just how good Classic was, but now you look at it and it's just a complete fucking waste of time. I don't know, like that product is just a complete joke. They said they wanted to do it a certain way, and now they've basically the community's actually like seemingly not wanted them to do it a certain way for a while now too. And then it's the whole legacy of it just has been tainted. I wish they never did it because Classic was something in my mind, and the community and the game in general warped into something entirely different now, to the point that it's kind of almost marred my remembrance of the game. Like it makes me no longer look back at certain things in Classic fondly, which is kind of sad because I had more fun on private servers than I did on the actual official Classic servers. And I think a lot of that is just because it almost ruined the game that I had been playing for 15 years. But the expansion itself was awesome, in my opinion. The dungeons were some of my favorites ever. The Motherlode, the one you're watching right now, This is probably one of my favorite dungeons ever, and Shadowlands is going to add to that list for sure. But in terms of BFA, there was some great dungeons. I really liked. Obviously, Freehold was another popular one, noted mostly for its simplicity and ease. But that's not why I liked it. I liked it because it offered a lot of choices, a lot of different things you can do, and it was different every week. You know, with the captains and the events that were going on. It was a little different every week. Motherload wasn't necessarily like that, but there was so many cool things that Blood DK can do. This was the ultimate moment for me to play a Blood DK. In PvE, I had some remarkable moments in Battle of the Zaralor and also in Motherload. Two of my favorite times playing a Blood Death Knight at any point, and this is including WoD challenge modes, which were the reason that I fell in love with Blood DK. And Blood DK wasn't in a great spot this expansion. Honestly, it was probably the worst it's ever been. Certainly that I've played. I only started playing it in WoD, like I said, but it's been relatively overpowered from all of WoD and all of Legion. BFA is the first time I had to face real adversity, and it felt good, honestly. Like, I wasn't sure when, especially, after season one, it was nerfed pretty heavily. A lot of people were really down on it. It really bothered me, especially coming into season four, when people were making comments about like they're a non-viable tank, like not even, they're not good compared to other tanks. They're like not a tank. Their damage intake is way too difficult to deal with. I just don't understand how a competitive player could ever have that mindset, but that's what people were saying, and it was tough to get through. But honestly, it was like it made me feel like a better player. I stuck with the class. I enjoyed it. I never really faltered on it. Early on in the expansion with very low haste, it was definitely not a lot of fun, especially after they removed my only Azerite trait that I was interested in using. But by the end, I'm still comfortably in love with it. I think Corruption was really, really fun as Blood DK. Obviously, they were one of the tanks that benefited the most from it, regardless of which route you took. I never really felt like at any point I was so underpowered that I couldn't play the character, but of course, Corruption really helped smooth that out. If you remember, things were a little shaky in season three there, especially in the beginning in that necrotic week. That was really the toughest moment for me this expansion. The first necrotic week of season three, I was almost considering hanging it up. With Blood DK, I was like, man, I just don't know what I'm doing wrong here. I was really reaching for something, and I don't know, we never really got over it. It just kind of got more gear and kind of pushed through. So, but yeah, another great expansion for tanking. I feel like it was a really fun expansion to tank in general. Never played the meta Prot Warrior, but you'd have seen some pretty nuts things as a tank. And especially in the raid, like I was saying, in Battle of the Zaralor, I think that was one of the best raids ever designed for tanking. I haven't raided a lot as a tank, but absolutely had a lot of fun in Battle of the Zaralor. It was a nice bounce back tier 4, so the mood was good, and it was before the nonsense that happened with Classic. But of course, there was a couple fights like the Rosticon encounter, solo tanking Buon Samdi. That might be the most fun I've ever had in raiding in general, even especially considering I don't really like tanking raids. Honestly, it's not my passion. I enjoy it. I enjoy leading raids a lot more, and I enjoy kind of coordinating and making decisions in raids. But tanking, dealing with tank mechanics, certainly not my interest. I'd much rather heal raids if I could, but I'd much rather tank 5-man. So unfortunately, you got to make that decision. It's good, it's passable, but tanking in Battle of the Zaralor really made me love it. And in Nyalotha too, it was a really good raid. In general, the raids were awesome this expansion. Uldir was the only good raid, or the only bad raid. Uldir was a bad raid, let's put it that way. Very short, very stupid, some very dumb encounters. That Zul encounter, I think, was one of the least inspired encounters they've ever made. And in fact, they pretty much had to nerf an entire spec in Subtlety Rogue just because of that. Also, I do feel like Blood DK maybe was in that boat too, because of some of the raid encounters, and also the season 2 design with Reaping, which a lot of people look back at and say like, oh, that was like the best designed affix ever, but I don't really agree. I certainly like the Prideful affix much better in Shadowlands. It's kind of like the Buon Samdi affix, but it's a lot more, I think there's going to be a lot more intelligence used, a lot more strategy involved, and it's going to be a lot harder, which is the main thing. And the difficulty of the game was pretty tough too, this expansion. I feel like it was really substantial at times, certainly compared to Legion Mythic Plus. Battle for Azeroth was just completely a different story altogether. And I think a lot of that is just to do with the seasonal affix. If you remember Legion, there was no seasonal affix. The only real difficulty was Tyrannical. I mean, Fortified was a complete joke on many keys. Not all, but there was some that were just, it was just 50, 100% easier in some weeks. So it was basically just Tyrannical was just, the hardest time, and otherwise you were good. This time around, there was a lot more balance, a lot more challenges, and they actually nerfed a lot of things, and it was still really challenging. Like, they nerfed Grievous like 5 times. They had to nerf it again in Shadowlands. You know what I mean? Like, what does that tell you? That the dungeons are just harder because Grievous was very strong in Legion, and Other than like a couple pieces of trash and maybe a boss or two, I don't think anybody looked at that as like, oh my God, this fix is impossible. So I think a lot of that is just the content and the design. And I think it was good. I think Battle for Azeroth PvE was quite good. I didn't do any like PvP or much else, but I would say that in terms of content, like creation, it was well done. I really liked the raid in between Dazar'alor as well. I can never remember the name of it. Crucible of Storms. It was a really good raid. I love the concept of a non-tank fight, like a fight where you can have a non-tank tank. I love that. It's probably like tier one, number one for me. If there was ever a fight that was like intentionally difficult, that was kind of like a little bit on the edge there. It was difficult, but it was never really meant to be that hard, not that hard progression wise. I love the concept of having a DPS tank, even though it causes some confusion. I don't dislike it at all. And as a raid leader, I think it's pretty fun to try to figure out, a stable extra tank who's not normally a tank. But I think the number one thing I liked about Battle for Azeroth, and the thing I'm actually going to miss, maybe not a lot of people will say this, I'm going to miss the zones and the atmosphere that the expansion offered. It was spectacular. I have to say, the music in Zuldazar, the zone itself. Let me tell you this: there is nothing like a rainstorm in Zuldazar. And there's nothing like night in Voldun. When I go into Voldun, I put the shade scale on, and that music plays. It's like a kind of like a deserty theme. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure you could find it, but it is an absolutely gorgeous track. Same with Zuldazar. Beautiful music, absolutely spectacular. The art, top notch. Of course, everybody praises the art team. They get too much praise and they deserve all of it. Let's put it that way. But the music is what's carrying right now for me. I used to never play with sound on, guys. Literally from WoD or up until WoD, I did not play with sound on. WoD was the first time I ever turned sound on, and it was actually because I had just started streaming World of Warcraft, and people were like, "You are going to stream with no sound at all?" Like I couldn't play music, and I had no sound in game. So I was starting to think like, wow, I guess I need to. So then like Legion, when I started streaming a lot more, what I would do is I would just turn sound on for the stream and then I would turn it back off. Like I'm talking about no sound, no voice acting, no combat sound, no music, not a thing, because I have a little bit of an audio impairment where if there's multiple things competing for my ear's attention, let's put it that way, I can't hear either of them. I don't know if this is normal, if it's an attention issue, not really anything physical, but I do have a lot of issues when, like, if Ventrilo is, or, well, we're not using Ventrilo anymore, but it was a common issue with Ventrilo. If Discord, people talking to me in Discord, and there's DBM or sounds going off in game, I can't process either of them. So that always seemed like the only way to play. But then I kind of got more used to it on stream. This was obviously the expansion that I developed as like a YouTuber, a streamer in general, and it really changed my life. By the end, I was doing it full time, not necessarily by design, but some 2020 stuff has pushed me in that direction, and I've learned a lot because of streaming and because of Battle for Azeroth. I think I'm stupid as this is going to sound. I think I'm a better person because of the challenges that Battle for Azeroth presented, and the fact that I've had to basically weather a storm here in a video game that I never. I mean, in Legion, I say this all the time. In Legion, we'd log on and there'd be 20 people online, and it'd be the same 20 every week for months. Like we raided with, I mean, that's not necessarily true. It was like 17, 16, but we raided with the same 15 people for a decade. And then all of a sudden, 5 of them were gone at the beginning of BFA. And then another 8 of them were gone during Classic. And a lot of them never returned. So it's pretty sad that it's gone that way for me. But I learned a lot about myself. I had to really dig deep. It was the first time I ever felt like, do I want to do this? Do I actually want to continue what I'm doing in this game? And of course, I eventually came out and said, like, yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. The game is my passion. It's my home. I want to be here for the long haul. But unfortunately, the number one thing that really is going to kind of hurt me going out of Battle for Azeroth is just the community in general. I don't know what's happened with this game, and I hate to say like it has anything to do with age, but I just feel like I'm identifying less and less with people on the internet in general. I feel like people are far quicker to overreact, far more prone to assume that there's only one way to succeed in this game. And it's really gotten really bad this expansion. I had multiple battles with multiple different elements of the community, especially as a Death Knight. I mean, I had probably 4 or 5 different times throughout this expansion where people were trying to like personally assault me because I was playing my DK a different way, completely closed-minded insults, like saying I'm like ruining the community. I'm misleading people because I'm making videos using certain setups as on Death Knight. Like, I'm just trying to encourage people to have fun, and these people are, who are seemingly in a position of power, people who are supposed to be helping the community, saying that I can't encourage people to have fun. Like, what are you talking about? And those people, I just don't think they don't like the job that they have. Like, they've been in this position by accident, and now when everybody asks them the same question 1,000 times, they hate answering it. I love answering it. I'll answer the same question 1,000,000 times. Let me do it. You know what I mean? I don't want that to be the way anybody feels about the game. I don't want them to feel like they're begrudging the position they're in. But this is what this community has turned into. Like, it just happened 2 weeks ago. Even these keys, the key that you're watching, it was part of a set of keys where we did a route in Underrot that I had done literally the whole expansion, and obviously it changed a bit in season 4 because the obelisk altered it. But it's like I had done this dozens of times, if not, we're talking like 50 times. You know what I mean? And they weren't always successful, but I know exactly what I'm doing. That's the easiest dungeon in the game. You've heard me talk about this all expansion, the most affix agnostic dungeon, and that's 90% of difficulty. I feel like right now is affixes. So if you're gonna say that I can't do the dungeon, you're wrong. I mean, it's just false. I've done the dungeon. In fact, that run that got posted, there's even somebody saying that there. He's like, you're at fault here, dude. You did a bad route. It's like, I have a 21, the exact same key, upgraded with this route, and it actually went way worse. I mean, we only got 2 pulls in, and it was already way better than that key. We upgraded the same key months ago. I'm talking about months ago, before corruption capped, before things got out of control, before the end of the expansion came. Months ago, upgraded to 21 Underrot, the exact same route. So I really don't know where this has come from, where all of a sudden everybody's a pro, super like elitist mentality. Not even elitist, because they're just wrong. Like, it used to be in WoW, elitism was like somebody who was actually like really knowledgeable and they had a chip on their shoulder about it. These guys are just idiots. Like, that's all there is to it. They're kids who can't think for themselves, and they're dominating the game right now. And it's, easy way to say just don't play with them, but I can't stop them. They're getting in my guild. They're ruining my life, honestly, in game, that is. Like, they're infiltrating every aspect of this game, and I don't know how to stop it anymore. I thought I used to. It's no longer something I can predict. It's just people. I think it's just the other influencers in this game, the community in general, the way Twitch and other content creation has worked in the modern day. It really encourages this don't think, just follow kind of mentality, and this is the exact opposite of who I am, who I've always been. It's not something like that's new. It's not like people say like I'm just trying to be contrarian or something. Like, it's not. It's not that way at all. I've been this way my whole life. I've always felt like I have to learn and follow my own heart, and that's it. I will be the best version of me when I've gone through every up and down myself. I'm not going to let somebody else tell me what I should do because they don't know who I am and I might react differently. And I think the real big moment this expansion came when I'd released, like, this was like way late in the expansion. I released a video talking about trinkets. Like, literally, first words out of my mouth are like, this is not a guide. I'm just giving you my opinion on these trinkets. At the end of season 4, basically, just kind of just started giving my opinion on trinkets. And somebody's like, there's no opinions. There's just the math. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you try to apply math, like blanket math, to a game that has this many variables in it. It's just idiocy. There's people, and I think maybe my perspective comes from somebody who was classically trained in science, and I think that's the difference. Maybe these guys are like engineers or coders or something like that, and they live and die by it. But I was trained to study and observe results and not just blindly rely on things that somebody, like, if that was the case, there would never be science, right? Like, all science is developed as a think tank, right? It all starts with a theory, and then you work to prove that theory. So I've used these trinkets or I've done these routes and they've worked for me. So it's just like, for me, it's just how it goes. Like, it works. There's no reason to deny it doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but to say like, just because the best comps in the world are using like warriors and these things and all these things. It's like the only way to play the game. It's just not true. I mean, that's just factually incorrect. But yet they act like it's the opposite. Like they act like there is no opinion; it's all fact. And it really just kind of put me off. So I really hope that that's not going to be something that I say is Battle for Azeroth, like, perpetuating into the future, because the expansion itself, if I removed all of that, is easily my favorite time in WoW. If we removed Classic and all the absolute nonsense that we went through with this game, and we removed all the people who literally just berated me for playing the game in a way I had fun, this was easily my favorite expansion. It's not even close. I mean, it's so. People talk about Legion all the time. I did not like Legion. The beginning of Legion was a mess. I freaking hated it. That was the only time I ever considered quitting the game permanently. I had fallen out of love with Holy Paladin, which was like breaking up with a long-term relationship for me. I had played it my whole life and I hated it. I really begrudged logging on it to the point that I wasn't even doing content on it, and I didn't know what the future held for me. Then a tanking spot opened up and things went from there, obviously, but it was hard. It was hard to come to terms with that, and the reason I hated it was because I felt like they over-designed it for no reason. If you didn't play Holy Palion, Mop, and Wad, and it's hard to describe, but it's literally the complete opposite of what it is now, and it's probably going to change closer to that in Shadowlands, so I might take another look at it, but hate the mastery, hated things like rule of law, hated things like aura of sacrifice in Legion, hated the fact that I had to be in melee, all these things. The artifact, I freaking hated that ability. There's pretty much nothing I liked about Holy Pally, other than the fact that they did really good damage on like small targets, like in 5-mans and stuff. I don't think I liked a single thing about Holy Paladin. And the legendaries, I got the worst legendaries. I was the last person in the guild to get a second legendary, and both of them were horrible. There was 3 really good legendaries for Holy Pally, and I never got them. I quit the class before I got any of them. And of course, that was because I was playing less. But yeah, I don't know. BFA never had that issue for me. It was consistent. There was no random, like insane randomness to the gear acquisition. Once they added Residium, all my issues with gearing and progression were solved, and I thought they had great raids. Battle for Dazarlar is going to go down as probably one of my top. It might actually be my top raid ever. I really like a couple raids. I always talk about ZG, but Battle for Dazarlar has got a great feel. Some of the best bosses, other than Jaina, absolutely hated that fight. Still do think it's one of the worst fights ever created. But besides Jaina, I think it might be my favorite raid ever. So what do you guys think? Not everybody's had the same experience, I'm sure, especially if you're not a raid leader, guild leader, but I think Battle for Azeroth was a time of great community engagement on the channel and around the game. We made a lot of friends, and maybe the thing that bothers me the most is how many friends we lost along the way, but I can't blame Blizzard for that. They're doing what they think is right, and I just really hope that we don't have a repeat of this with the Burning Crusade. I will not be playing that. I make that clear now. It will not be another. I will not be falling into another trap by Blizzard. This will be the last time I do that for sure. I might play it off screen, but there will not be any commitment to it or investment in it. It just creates way too many. It's just not worth it. So, but yeah, let's see. Shadowlands coming out. Battle for Azeroth's officially over. Love to hear your thoughts. Especially maybe about some of the systems like corruption. I like corruption. It was obviously imbalanced, but that's WoW. Like to be honest, all these people complaining about like the potential imbalance in Shadowlands, I don't think they've looked at the game recently, because it's been pretty friggin' imbalanced this expansion, and it's really been that way since WoD. I think great imbalance since WoD. If you remember back, Arcane Mage was literally probably like 500% stronger than most specs in the game. Like it was just doing like 5 times more damage than every other spec. It's not really changed dramatically since then. Legion was another time of great imbalance. Tanks have been pretty balanced. Healers have been good, but DPS is always going to be imbalanced. So I relish that. I think a skilled player is going to thrive on imbalance. A lot of these people out there who are making YouTube careers or streaming careers are doing it because of that. They're exploiting the imbalance. They're showing absurd things that the game should never allow, but because of the imbalance and the way they're applying their skill to that imbalance, they're able to make a big play. So anyway, that's it. Let me know what you think about Battle for Azeroth. It's been a ride for sure. I will miss much of it. I'm going to regret that a lot of it's over. Islands too, they were cool. Some things hopefully that will still be possible in the game. But I am very much looking forward to Shadowlands. I am full steam ahead on that. I don't feel like there's anything that's going to stop me from enjoying it out of the gate. I know a lot of people are already on the negativity trains on Shadowlands, but after living through the start of Legion, which was ridiculously bad for me, and the start of BFA, which was pretty bad too. I don't see, especially, they delayed it or whatever. I just, there's no possible way that I can be anywhere near as disappointed with Shadowlands as I was with Legion and then potentially also BFA. So let me know what you think. We will see you in the next one.